probably right around when I met you, right around 02, 03, something like that. So John's been doing the NBA draft on various platforms for well over a decade. And I'm curious, John, I don't know if it's a radical shift in scouting philosophy, but what have you seen from the time you went through the profession over 10 years ago to now, incorporating the European, which has been viable for way before that, obviously, the one-and-dones? Just, I think it's changed a bit, but from your eyes, what have you seen?
Well, I think the game has changed so much right now because we're seeing rules really differentiate at the NBA level, like more freedom of movement, less hand checks. Certain players are going to now have certain skills that a bigger premium is placed on in the NBA level. And I think when you're watching the NBA, as I do, only really during the playoffs because I'm so immersed in college basketball, you notice certain trends starting to take shape. Smaller, more skilled players right now have more value than they did 10 years ago because the league is different. Players who in college had to deal with more zone defenses who are now going to be able to roam free in the NBA are going to be guys who might have more value in the mid to the latter part of the first round because their skill set is more equipped to deal with the NBA than it was in college basketball. And I'll give you a perfect example right out of the gate. Like, I felt really all year long that there were certain players in college basketball that weren't playing at Blue Bloods, but if you switch them with somebody who was playing at Kentucky, they would be compared to one of the players that John Calipari has had recently at Kentucky. And Chris Dunn's an easy one to make because I've said, since November that if you switched him and Tyler Ulis, people would be comparing Chris Dunn to John Wall 7 days a week and twice on Sunday.
I agree.
But I also think Demetrius Jackson from Notre Dame, if he was at Kentucky, people would be comparing him to Eric Bledsoe. Because when you look at his demeanor, he's almost built like a defensive back. He was a starter on back-to-back teams who made the Elite Eight. And Brandon and Tiki, when you look at the NBA playoffs and you look at teams that played combo guards together, here's a guy at the next level that defenders are going to have a hard time staying in front of. He needs to be a better shooter, but just in terms of the ability to break down the defense and get to the 10, that's the perfect example of a player who's better suited to make an impact at the NBA level now versus maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Tiki, how's that for a first answer?
I know, right?
Not bad,
how much time are you spending on the international guys? Because I think that's an X factor. It's one that we as fans,
we don't even pretend we don't know these
analysts,
guys.
we have no idea.
We can recite names.
Like
we don't know.
Kristaps Porzingis, we saw some video like a week before he was drafted last year. It's like, oh, this guy's got a pretty good shot. Turned out to be a good player. But then you go look at the kid this year, Dragan Bender, right, in Maccabi, Israel.
Well, what I've kind of learned is you have to trust your Rolodex. And that goes back to gathering information.
But who has a Rolodex? I mean, come on. Let's update the term. Rolodex. I mean, is the receptionist going to type it out on the typewriter for you?
No. What I'm just saying
rags of a Marlboro?
What I'm just saying is, trust your Rolodex and means trust the people that you have in your phone. Like, I talked to an NBA general manager a couple weeks ago about Dragan Bender, and he told me that Dragan Bender is the best European prospect that's come into the NBA draft other than Kristaps Porzingis. He's a bigger Nikola Mirotic. He's somebody that, again, should have an impact at the NBA level. But when I'm doing the reporting, I'm making sure to preface the statement and say that intel, that information came from an NBA general manager. Because I'm going to be honest, I don't have time to go over to Treviso, nor do I have the budget to go over to Treviso and scout these guys right now because I have to consume myself with the college game. Because
I get it.
The NBA draft's obviously what you cover in June, but you're covering college basketball 12 months a year.
I gotcha. John Rothstein's with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio. He's in studio for this segment and next segment. If there's a question for your team or a team need or a player that you have your eye on, hit us up on Twitter. We'll get a chance to read some with Froman John at Tiki and Tierney. Give us your view on Buddy Hield. I mean, there's a lot to like, but there's also a few things to really criticize in terms of athleticism. What do you think?
We've seen more of a premium on shot making, obviously, in the NBA right now. So you know that Buddy Hield is going to be able to translate to the NBA level in terms of making shots. He made 147 threes last year. He had 14 games with 5 or more made three-point shots. I think it's realistic to expect Buddy Hield to be in a situation where he could come in and make shots at the NBA level. But an NBA head coach once told me this, and I will use it till I go to the grave. You are who you can guard. So we look at Buddy Hield and we think of a great offensive player, but conversely, Buddy Hield is going to have to guard Klay Thompson.
I wouldn't draft him very high myself.
Buddy Hield is going to have to guard marquee wings. And that's the same thing when it comes to point guards. And that's what I come up with when I talk about Tyler Ulis. Nobody is going to question Tyler Ulis' ability to run a team, to take care of the ball, to find his teammates in strides. But if you're going to draft Tyler Ulis, you're saying that we're going to go to war with Tyler Ulis against Damian Lillard, against Chris Paul, against Kyrie Irving. I mean, I love Tyler Ulis, and I think he's going to be an exceptional backup in the NBA, but that's probably the ceiling.
Yeah, what about the guy who doesn't – I mean, we see this all the time in the NBA now. Guys just don't play defense. James Harden doesn't play defense. Did we think James Harden was going to be the superstar that he was when he came out of college? And if not, then who is that guy in this year's draft?
Well, I named one, Demetrius Jackson, in terms of being a potential mid-first-round steal. The other guy – that is getting a lot of interest between 20 and 30 that I think is the sleeper of the 2016 NBA draft is DeAndre Bembry from St. Joseph's. Now, DeAndre Bembry can go into an NBA game right now and have an impact, but it's all about fit. St. Joseph's had major chemistry issues before DeAndre Bembry got to campus, and he was the cement that filled everything in between the cracks the past 3 years when St. Joe's won 2 of the last 3 Atlantic 10 tournaments. But he's the type of guy that if he goes to an Oklahoma City or a San Antonio, he will be in a situation where he can be a rotation guy next year. From what I'm hearing right now, Atlanta has a lot of interest at 21. Philadelphia has interest at 24 and 26, and also San Antonio at 29. But that's the type of guy. If he goes to the Sixers and they're in a rebuilding situation, you're not going to see him flourish. He needs to be around other guys that obviously are playing at a high level.
I remember checking out some of the early mocks, as I always do, and this was probably, I don't know, over last summer. And then I checked back, and I knew that this kid Henry Ellenson from Marquette was starting to get a lot of pub, and I said, get ready for the St. John's game. I said, I gotta really see what this kid's all about. I want to see if the hype matches, or if the skill set matches the hype. And I got to be honest, when I first watched Ellenson, I said, there is no way, no chance I'd burn a top 10 pick on this kid. There's no way. And then I saw him again in the Big East tournament, and I said, a little bit better with the offhand than I thought, a little tougher than I thought, a little more range than I thought. Is he worthy of a top 10 pick? Because it looks like he's going to be a lottery pick. You like him?
I'm torn. I'm torn in certain instances. We have to remind ourselves this. Henry Ellenson, played 1 year of college basketball. Statistically, he put up around the same numbers at Marquette as a freshman that Kevin Love put up at UCLA, and you would say when you look at their body type, especially when they were in college, it was the same. Now, again,
I think Ellenson's stronger than Kevin Love, actually.
And let's be fair. When Kevin Love was a freshman at UCLA, he played with Darren Collison, Russell Westbrook, and Luke Richard Mbamute. With all due respect to Tracy Carter and Juwan Johnson and the guys at Marquette, they weren't of that caliber. And I think so much needs to go into account in terms of who you're playing with. Nobody really looks at that in certain instances in terms of who you're playing with at the college level. Look, Ben Bentel from Providence, from what I'm hearing, is probably going to be a first-round pick. That doesn't happen if he doesn't play with Chris Dunn. That's things you have to take into consideration.
Yeah, although I'm probably more of a fan of Bentel's skill sets than you let on. I understand that Dunn's presence amplified the spotlight on Bentel.
Right.
I'm with you on that, but I think Ben's going to be a good pro.
And Bentel is also coming into the NBA at the perfect time because now all of a sudden the NBA is really putting a focus on the stretch 5 spot. But think about this in terms of internal development. Ben Bentel made 9 threes as a freshman. He made 52 as a sophomore. And again, it goes into the personnel situation. Providence had a 7'2" big man in their program, Pascal Chukwu, who decided to transfer last year. He'll play for Syracuse next season. If Ben Bentel isn't in a situation where he has to play the 5, all of a sudden he's not a mismatch to bring the opponent's big man away from the basket to extend the defense and show that he can screen and roll and pick and pop.
No, he's